living in Sycamore Heights. I never expected my backyard chickens would begin an all-out war with my HOA's most ruthless board member, who kept stealing my fresh eggs right from my coop when Margaret pushed me too far with threats of massive fines. How was I supposed to know my brilliant eggle of revenge would batter down our entire neighborhood? The sound of my alarm jolted me awake at 5:30 a.m. I groaned, but recalling soon why I had set it so early my chickens 6 months ago. I constructed a lovely coop in my backyard. At Sycamore Heights, my girls, Henrietta Pepper Goldie and Ruby, thanked me with the best tasting eggs I'd never had. "Good morning, ladies," I spoke about softly as I came inside the nest. CPE, something wasn't quite right. At once yesterday, I'd noted 8 perfect eggs today, just 3 laid in the nesting boxes. Strange, perhaps. The girls were frantic. I scratched my head, collected up the remaining eggs, and went in to start cooking breakfast. This was a trend continued for a week each morning, fewer eggs than they should have been. I started counting, anally tracking laying habits in a little notebook. My chickens were obviously producing, but someone was stealing them. But who would steal eggs? I told my neighbor Jeff while watering my garden. "You know, Margaret from the HOA board has been passing by your house every morning." He said casually, "I'd noticed because she's never up that early, usually." Margaret Wilkins, just the name made my stomach knot. She'd moved to Sycamore Heights 3 years earlier and immediately joined the Homeowners Association board. Ever since she'd placed stricter rules on everything from mailbox colors to how long trash cans could remain at the curb. "You think she's knocking me off with my eggs?" I asked in confusion. Jeff shrugged. "Wouldn't do it to her. She's been flaunting everyone pictures of your coop, saying it breaks community rules." My blood began boiling. I had read the HOA handbook with great care before I built my coop. There were codes for buildings, but nothing. Whatever that said, no chickens. I'd taken great care to make my coop spick and span and the right distance from property lines the next morning. I shirked my regular routine. Instead, I concealed behind my garden shed with mobile phone camera poised at the ready at 6:15 a.m. Like clockwork, an individual in designer sportswear slipped beyond my side gate. Margaret, her ponytail swung as she neared my coop, looking cautiously over her shoulder. She opened the door, slowly reached inside, and gently placed a couple of eggs into a small piece of material. I stepped out from behind my concealment. Finding all okay, Margaret. She leaped so high that she nearly dropped the eggs. Her face turned bright red, then very quickly transformed into a self-righteous. "I frown. I'm gathering evidence," she said, chin raised. "Your little farm operation infringes on community standards. Does evidence gathering usually entail trespassing?" I asked peacefully, though my heart was pounding and stealing. "It's not stealing when it's contraband," she said with a smirk from her bag. She pulled out an official-looking paper. "This is a notice of offending your chicken coop. Has to go within days, otherwise you'll get a $100 per diem fine." I took the paper hands. My hands were slightly shaking. There was nothing in the bylaws. Regarding chickens, the board voted in new amendments the previous month. No animals at all, allowed, chickens included. She smiled even bigger. "You should have come to the meeting that night. I was working late nights that week." She knew this. Margaret worked the same hospital, but was in administration, while I was a nurse. The eggs are just bonus proof. She continued dropping them into her expensive purse, although they are tasty in my morning smoothie, as she strided away. Victorious, I was frozen. My chickens were not pets. They were therapy after long hospital shifts sitting with them. Pecking around the yard, hearing their soft clucking. It calmed me like nothing else. And those fresh eggs were slashing my grocery bill way down in bad times that night. I couldn't sleep. I reviewed the HOA papers again. The amendment had actually been passed, but they hadn't gone through proper procedure for notification. Still, fighting the HOA would be exhausting and possibly expensive, while surfing internet bulletin boards about HOA disputes. I read stories of other homeowners using creative solutions. One caught my eye, a person who had dealt with fruit thieves using fake fruits filled with dye. A light bulb did go off in my head. I spent my day off driving to craft shops, Buying up supplies, I learned ceramic eggs specifically for crafters. Small bottles of blue washable dye and silicone sealant in the house. I drilled small holes in the ceramic eggs, filled the dye in them, and sealed them up tight when dry. I placed them in an obvious location in the nesting boxes, hiding the real eggs. Somewhere else, my heart was pounding as I went to bed. That night, was this childish? Maybe. But Margaret had crossed the line. She wasn't simply upholding rules she was enjoying, it taking my eggs for her own pleasure and threatening my quiet backyard hobby. Sometimes you have to stand up for bullies, I muttered to myself as I drifted off to sleep, certainly wondering what the morning might bring at 6:22 a.m. A blood-curdling scream cut across the neighborhood. I was already awake, waiting. I looked through my blinds to see Margaret standing next to my coop hands and designer clothes splattered with bright blue dye, one of my ceramic eggs broken at her feet. I took my phone and stepped outside. Already recording. "Is all right, Margaret?" I asked innocently. She whirled around to me, face contorted with anger. "You did this on purpose. Look at my clothes, my hands. This is assault." "I'm confused," I said. "Still recording. Why are you in my yard at 6 a.m.? And why are you touching my decorative eggs?" "Decorative," she spluttered. "You booby-trapped them. They're craft projects. I like to keep them in the coop as inspiration for the chickens." I declared flat-faced. "The question is why you're trespassing on my land again." Margaret's eyes slit narrow. "I'm calling the police and the HOA attorney." "You'll regret it the moment you ever relocated to Sycamore Heights," as she fumbled with her blue-stained telephone. Cal said, "Before you call the police. You may want to know I have security camera video of you stealing my eggs daily this week. Trespassing and theft are real crimes." "Margaret, my decorating choices aren't." She hesitated, weighing her options. "Delete the video. Now she commanded me to can't do that. But maybe we can make a deal. You leave my chickens alone. I'll keep the tape to myself for a second." I imagined that she would comply. Then her face set in a stern look. "You don't know who you're messing with," she spat. "I dominate this neighborhood by next week. Everyone around here will believe you're the neighborhood menace, not me." As she walked away, leaving blue footprints down my garden path, I questioned whether I'd just made a horrific error had I just provoked the most influential individual in Sycamore Heights. 3 days had elapsed with no appearance of Margaret, just when I'd thought maybe she'd finally given up. The email had come subject line, "Emergency, HOA meeting, health hazard at 247 Maple Drive, my home." I clicked it open with quivering fingers. Margaret had scheduled an emergency board meeting for this Friday evening to discuss the dangerous situation on my land, with accusations of hazardous materials and hostile behavior against board members. She'd included photos of her blue, hand-stained hands as evidence. What she didn't mention was her trespassing or egg thievery. The email had been phrased in this manner that it was like she'd been conducting an official tour when she got attacked by my booby traps. My phone started ringing with text messages from neighbors. "What's happening? Are you housing dangerous animals?" "My kids walk past your residence to school." Margaret had sent her message to the whole neighborhood, not just to the board. My stomach fell. She was turning people against me, even before I had the opportunity to defend myself. I required help. I phoned my sister Amy, who was a parallel. "She can't do this." Amy explained to me after I explained everything to her. First, emergency meetings require certain conditions under HOA bylaws. Second, she was trespassing. Third, you have evidence. "But she's the HOA president's friend," I said dejectedly. "Nobody's going to believe me. Then make your case public." Amy suggested HOAs hate publicity. Create a website showing your ad, Healthy Chickens, the health benefits of fresh eggs, the eco-friendliness of local food. Post your security cameras, so embarrassing for them that they retreat. I spent that night building a simple website called Save Our Sycamore Chickens. I posted photos of my immaculate coop, my happy, healthy hens, and most importantly, the security footage of Margaret sneaking into my yard 6 days in a row. I attached research about backyard chick property prices. They weren't affected, and noise levels minimal to dogs. I also gathered statements from friends who had appreciated my fresh eggs, plus records of how my setup met all health and safety guidelines. The following day, I printed flyers with QR code referencing my website and strategically placing them in neighbors' mailboxes prior to leaving for work by lunchtime. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Most messages were supportive. Had no idea. Margaret was shoplifting from you. Your coop is gorgeous. Can my kids come by sometime? I'll speak at the meeting for you. But a few were clearly from Margaret's friends. You're making our neighborhood look junky. Nobody wants to smell chicken crap. The most surprising text they were from Walter Jenkins, our 80-year-old neighbor. She's been stealing my tomatoes, count me in on the meeting. Friday night arrived, I dressed up in professional clothes and arrived early at the community center. Already the parking lot was fuller than I'd ever seen. For an HOA meeting inside, folks were taking sides, literally. Margaret's van sat on the left, mine on the right. I was amazed at seeing more folks on my side, including many. I barely knew Margaret entered with HOA President Thompson and 2 other board members. Her normally perfect appearance seemed strained. Her smile tight, she glared. When she saw the crowd, President Thompson summoned the gathering to order. Looking uncomfortable, we're here to address a complaint concerning the property located at 247 Maple Drive, namely concerning chickens, and a reported incident involving booby traps. Margaret interrupted with her hands raised, which still bore slight blue stains. She purposely laid out a trap which destroyed my clothing and could have been dangerous. I raised my hand in a calm way, and Thompson nodded before we could discuss the EG incident. I would like to know why Miss Wilkins was on my property at 6 a.m. Uninvited, I said firmly, and why she's been stealing my eggs for weeks. Murmurs circulated throughout the room. Thompson looked confused. What is she saying? Margaret's face flushed. I was conducting an inspection unannounced or with permission. I asked, is that standard HOA protocol? Show them the video titled, A Voice from the Back. Others joined in Thompson's side. Do you have evidence of these assertions? I connected my computer to the projector. The footage was irrefutable. Margaret entering my property day after day, pilfering eggs, never conducting any type of inspection. When the lights flashed back on, Margaret was hotly whispering to Thompson. He became increasingly uneasy, even if she was pilfering eggs. Which I'm not affirming, Thompson said guardedly. The issue remains that backyard chickens violate our new amendment. To that amendment, I clarified, ripping out papers under bylaw, Section 7. Amendments require written notice to all 30 days prior to the vote. No notice was mailed. Thompson snatched the papers in a scowl. We emailed some residents, I admonished. I have 10 homeowners here who were not notified. That makes the amendment void. Walter Jenkins stood slowly. And whereas we are talking of Margaret's inspections, I want to know why she's been visiting my vegetable garden and stealing tomatoes without permission. Suddenly, others followed suit. She stole flowers from my garden. She helped herself to my mail order parcels. She borrowed my lawnmower without permission and never returned it. Margaret's face had become red, then white. These are all lies. They're ganging up on me because I enforced the rules. But the tide had turned, even. Her supporters looked stunned by the mounting charges. Thompson cleared his throat. I think we must leave the chicken on hold until procedures for review of the amendment, and he glared directly at Margaret. We may need to discuss board conduct rules at the next meeting. Margaret jumped up to her feet. This is outrageous. She has dangerous animals and attacked me with blue dye. Are you people blind there? Ceramic eggs? Margaret, I said, softly, decorative pieces on my private property, which you had no business touching. I propose that we ignore this complaint and reinstate the old rules until proper amendment procedures can be adopted, said Mrs. Rivera, a board member who'd been quiet up till now. The motion passed 4-1, with only Margaret voting against as people made their way out. Many stopped to congratulate me or ask when they could purchase eggs. Margaret stormed out alone, phone clutched in her hand, already dialing. I should have felt victorious, but there was something in her look that bothered me. She wasn't resigning from this fight, was only just beginning. and I wondered what move she would make next. As Walter tapped my shoulder and invited me to come and take a look at his garden tomorrow, I caught sight of Margaret in the car park, talking hardly to anyone at all in an expensive vehicle. I did not know who her influential acquaintance was, and what were they conspiring? I had emerged victorious this time, but Margaret's words echoed in my mind. "You have no idea who you're messing with." My hands shook as I opened the thick oak doors of our community center tonight. Wasn't just any HOA meeting. It was my judgment day. The room fell silent when I entered 40 pairs of eyes, turning to stare. Margaret sat at the center table, her blue-stained Gucci blouse displayed on a hanger next to her, like a battle flag. "There she is," Margaret's voice cut through the silence. "The chicken lady who thinks she can attack HOA officers." I clutched my folder of evidence tighter inside. Was everything I needed. If only they would hear me. President Thompson, a retired judge with steel gray hair, slammed his gavel. "This emergency meeting will be brought into session. We are here to address complaints against the property at 1422 Wisteria Lane regarding unauthorized livestock and retaliatory actions against HOA personnel." My mouth went dry. The term emergency wasn't suitable. They had rushed this, having given me not much more than 24 hours to get ready for my defense. Before we start, President Thompson went on, "I have to tell everyone that Channel 8 News reached out to us. Regarding this issue, it seems someone has been leaking information to local heads of media." Whispers broke out. Margaret's face reddened. This was the first shock for her. I had submitted an anonymous tip to the news organization regarding HOA over in our neighborhood. Nothing like a bit public gaze to keep things fair, Ms. Winters. "You can make your argument against the homeowner." Thompson nodded toward Margaret. Margaret stood dramatically, extracting a thick binder for 3 months. "I've documented several violations at 1422. Wisteria, the homeowner, has established an illegal farming setup in a residential zone." She flipped through photos of my modest coop and 6 hens and presented them as if I were running a factory farm. When I attempted to capture evidence of these violations, I was assaulted with a booby-trapped explosive device that wrecked my clothes and could have caused serious injury. Gasps were in the air. I fought not to roll my eyes. "Miss Winters," Thompson asked, "why were you on the property collecting eggs when you could have simply photographed from the sidewalk?" Margaret stuttered, "I needed to document the whole extent of the violation. So you were on private property without invitation?" His eyebrow went up slightly. I hadn't expected Thompson to pose such a sarcastic question. Maybe he wasn't quite in Margaret's back pocket after all. For 40 minutes, Margaret told about my supposed crimes against Sycamore Heights community standards. She brought out the ceramic egg pieces, her bloodied clothes, and even had her doctor testify regarding her emotional distress resulting from the ordeal. When it was my turn, I proceeded calmly. "I've lived in Sycamore Heights for 7 years and have always appreciated our community. But what's been happening recently isn't about community standards. It's about harassment." I reviewed my security tape on the projector. The clock showed Margaret entering my backyard on 12 different mornings. Always when I was away at work, the tape clearly showed she was stealing eggs, not just taking photos of them. This is not HOA enforcement. This is trespassing and theft. I warned her, and it's gone on for weeks. The room buzzed with whispers. Margaret's face paled of color. Also, I proceeded. "I've researched the local codes heavily. I distributed copies of my findings. Our county specifically includes backyard hens on residential lots. The HOA rules don't directly prohibit them. They merely say no. Leave stock that's too loud or smelly. My hens are quiet, clean, and in cages." I presented photos of my immaculate coop setup and statements from my immediate neighbors attesting they'd never been bothered by noise or smell. Next came my masterstroke. I created a community poll showing 72% of Sycamore Heights residents actually supported giving backyard hens I'd quietly conducted. This research for the past month winning support, while Margaret thought I was simply waiting for my punishment. And as for the bomb device, a ceramic egg with washable craft dye, I demonstrated with a sample an innocent deterrent placed on my own property to find out who was stealing from me. The dye washes out with normal laundry soap. As I finished the back door, swung a Channel 8 news reporter slipped in with a cameraman. Ideal timing, President Thompson cleared his throat. We'll take a 15-minute recess before voting during the break. An elderly man came up to me. His hands shook when he spoke. I'm Edwin Jenkins of Maple Street. Margaret's been stealing my prize tomatoes for months. They said they violated some regulation about Garden Heights. His voice cracked. I was too scared to complain after my wife died. This garden is all I own. Others gathered round relating the same stories Margaret had been exerting. A neighborhood oohed rule of terror, selectively applying rules to those she disliked. When the meeting continued, something strange happened. Thompson requested other people to make their statements separately. Neighbors stood up to testify to their experiences regarding Margaret's bizarre form of enforcement. The final vote wasn't even near the board, made the decision 6-1, that my chickens could stay. And they began an inquiry into Margaret's conduct as a member of the HOA board at the meeting. Jed Margaret stormed up to me, her face distorted with anger. This isn't finished. I'll appeal to the county. I'll sue you personally. I just gave her a bottle of laundry detergent with a smile for your shirt. Instructions are on the back. The news crew taped the whole transaction on television tomorrow. The entire Sycamore Heights would be breaking their fasts while watching Margaret's humiliation on the morning news. What I didn't realize was how deeply. Margaret's roots in our community ran, or how menacing a cornered bully could get when her power was threatened. Rain drummed against my kitchen window. 3 days after the HOA meeting, I took sips of my coffee, watching my hens cluster in their cover. Run the Channel 8 news segment had run yesterday depicting Margaret as a rogue, HOA enforcer, and me as the plucky homeowner who challenged tyranny. My phone hadn't stopped ringing with supporting messages. But the victory felt hollow. Margaret's car hadn't moved from her driveway since word of the meeting had spread, that she'd called in sick to her real estate job. Part of me felt guilty. I wanted justice, not to destroy someone. The doorbell rang. I opened it to see President Thompson standing on my doorstep, dripping without an umbrella. May I come in? It's urgent. I led him to my kitchen table, extending a towel and coffee. Margaret had resigned the board this morning. He told me, looking into his mug. But that's not why I'm here. The board's been playing some bookkeeping. He shoved a folder down the table. Inside were bank statements showing over $14,000 gone from the HOA reserve money. We think Margaret's been taking for years. Little money maintenance fees for things never done. She did all the paperwork herself. My head was spinning. Why are you sharing this with me? Because you're good at research. Are familiar with the bylaws better than most of us. And honestly, you said something when others wouldn't. He let out a great sigh of relief. The board would like to make an offer for you to assume Margaret's position. I nearly choked on coffee. You want me to join the HOA board after everything that happened? Sometimes the greatest watchdogs are those who've been bitten. He said we need someone who questions things. I told him I'd consider about it after he left. I braved the rain to go visit my chickens. They clucked happily, unmoved by the weather or HOA politics. Later in the day, a moving van arrived in front of Margaret's. I watched from my window as men pushed furniture Margaret oversaw under an umbrella, never once looking in the direction of my home. My phone rang a number I did not recognize. Is this the chicken lady? A gruff voice asked. Who's calling? Name's Dave Perkins. I operate Sunnyside Community Garden over in Pinecrest. Saw you on the news. Impressive work, he said. That community gardens across the county were fighting similar battles with HOAs and city ordinances. They wished to enact an alliance to support urban farming rights, and they wished me to help lead it. We require someone who is aware how to fight. Clever Dave said someone who utilizes the rules as opposed to simply screaming about them. Prior to my being able to reply, a bang from beyond the building caused me jump. I rushed over to the window to see Margaret walking along my front lawn with a garden rake held behind her, my chicken coop door left open. I dropped the phone and ran out. Margaret, what do you suppose you're doing putting the trouble to sleep once and for all? She used the rake wildly. If the birds are gone, there's nothing to defend my chickens, roaming all around the yard, flapping in flight in terror as rain fell in sheets. This is madness. I tried to bar her into the mud. Devastated me. She cried 20 years on that board. My reputation all because of your stupid eggs. Neighbors emerged from their front doors standing in astonishment someone was filming with their phone. I had to grab the handle of the rake. Margaret, please, this is not doing anything. Release, she pulled hard and sent us tumbling into the mud. We sat there wet and dirty as my chickens clucked, nervously circling around us. The stupidity of it all hit me, and I started to laugh after a space. Margaret's fury crumbled, and she laughed too, a broken, weary sound. I'm going to Arizona, she said. Finally, my sister lives there. No way, chai good idea, I said, getting up and holding out my hand. She hesitated, then took it. As I helped her up, I picked up on that the entire block was staring. Among them was Edwin Jenkins, defensively clinging to a potted tomato plant. Margaret looked out at the crowd and then over at me. I never took any money, she whispered. They'll blame me too if you didn't take it. Help me find out who did, I said quietly. Make restitution before you leave. Something changed in her eyes. She nodded once and then melted into the crowd 2 weeks later. The truth came out. The HOA treasurer, a reserved man by the name of Robert who had always supported Margaret, had been stealing money for years. Margaret had suspected, but looked the other way. For his votes on the board, my investigation had inadvertently exposed both of them. I did eventually join the HOA board. My first proposal was a comprehensive urban farming ordinance that protected both property values and homeowners' rights to cultivate food, passed unanimously. Margaret sent me a postcard from Arizona 6 months later. No word, but only a photo of desert chickens' gambles, quail scurrying across the sand. I have one on my refrigerator alongside the newspaper clipping of our new neighborhood garden, where neighbors now exchange everything from gardening tips to fresh eggs. The blue-filled ceramic egg still sits on my windowsill. I no longer require it, but I hold on to it as a reminder that sometimes standing your ground doesn't mean standing alone, and sometimes your worst enemy can become the catalyst for your community, to be something better every morning when I go pick eggs. Now I find myself oddly grateful to Margaret in trying to steal something from me. She inadvertently helped me learn my voice and my place in this community.